Hello, I'm the host of the All Around Grand Show, Loren Sederstrom, and today I have my co-host with me, Larry Lanoux. And we have a lot of clips to get for you today. We're trying to give you a moving picture of what's happening in the city of Grant. I was going to bring one of my car clips back, but it's not completed yet. We did rescue it from the salvage bin because it almost went south with a bad tape. So what we're going to have is we're going to give you a series of clips. We're going to give you updates on the Charter Commission, some about what's going on with the City Council acting as a planning commission. And so the first clip we're going to go to is from the Charter Commission, which was last week, in the control room. You could play that. We'll talk on the other side.
Pleasure to speak to you this evening without the Washington County Sheriff having to attend. Many of you are aware of the recent happenings in New Hope, a shooting that occurred at a recent City Council meeting.
Boy, that was quick.
No, it's going to keep going.
Sheriff Bill Hutton dispatched 3 deputies to last month's Grant's council meeting to watch Councilman Jeff Huber's body language. Sheriff Hutton was made aware by several residents of Grant that Jeff Huber made a threat to Councilman Larry Lanoux in the City Hall parking lot. Mr. Huber's statement to Larry Lanoux: "If I have a little red dot, I would like to put on your forehead." I'm suggesting the banning of guns/weapons on city property to be included into your charter.
Well, that was kind of interesting to hear that type of allegation. And in fact, being a city council person, I was at the meeting, and there was in fact 3 officers, and I didn't understand why, but what do I know? That's just the background, but one of the things the themes that we're going to be talking about is how the city of Grant is run. Now, does the mayor run the city? Who actually runs the city? And if we could play this next clip, we'll talk on the other side.
That was Bob Engelhardt, Joliet, Grant. I have some notes here that I was going to read tonight to you, but it's not going to mean anything. I think I'm going to say something more that's from my heart. And that is, who runs the city of Grant? They're people that don't live in Grant. You got Nick Vivian, a Wisconsinite, who's termed his main office is in Wisconsin, Hudson, Wisconsin. I've been there. That's his main office. He has to have an office here in Stillwater, but it's not his main one. He told me, my main office is in Hudson. You got our city clerk, administrator, whatever you want to call her. She lives in Maplewood. Okay? Then you got the best of them all, the planner. She lives in St. Paul, and she comes here and she tells us how we should have our city done. Using Hennepin County, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Tom Carr, you don't even have to look at me, because you know that what you're doing to the city is wrong. You're splitting us up. You're the one that caused the Charter Commission to come to being. And yet you don't even want to recognize it. You're the one that caused the Charter Commission to be as it is now, because you wanted to control it. You can sit there, keep your eyes down, blink up and down at me. I don't care. It doesn't make any difference. I'm just saying is that what we have to do is get the city of Grant back on the way that it used to be, the old way. Start to look at what we had in the past and say, yeah, we had a city that was in the country. Instead of having that country becoming a city life. Pretty soon we're going to have...
That's kind of interesting. That's a resident that has come forward and spoke before. And he kind of summed up the sentiment of a lot of people. And one of the things we find, I mean, the man spoke, I feel, very eloquently about that the mayor isn't running the city. He's handing it off to the consultants, and whatever they tell him, he does. I mean, it would be nice if he'd read the packet before he attended the meeting. That might not be a bad idea. But that's what's going on. And, don't take my word for it. We have a next few clips that are going to show evidence of this. So if we could play the next one, we'll talk on the other side.
Who had that information directly from the city attorney.
Okay,
It is January 1st to December 31st.
all right. Tom?
Well, I just would like to say to the Charter Commission members, well, that's not what I was told, and I think then it was checked, and
I was told wrong information, so apologize for that.
Okay,
Don't let it happen again.
Aye.
okay. Larry?
There we go.
See, Lauren, and I think just a little bit of explanation on that clip. What we're talking about is the funding for the Charter Commission. It's the Charter Commission, the city petitioned to become a charter city, yet the city does not give the funding. And Mayor
They won't
Carter...
even let them meet in the city hall, for Pete's sakes.
Yeah, and last month, previous month, Mayor Carter says, well, there's $3,000 available, and see, the information that Mayor Carr relies on is from his attorney, Eckberg Lammers. Folks, we're getting all kinds of wrong information from our city planner, or our city attorney. It goes right down to the, I've requested to have the city planner, a history of the city she worked for, because if you look at our seal, on our town, on our letterhead, it says a home in the country. I think it's soon to be a home in the city. And when I've asked the background on our city planner as she's doing it, because we've requested to be at the staff meetings, and we're told as councilmen, we're not allowed to go to staff meetings. So I did a little background check on Jennifer Haskamp, our city planner, Swanson Haskamp, and the best I could come up with is it says she was a sales associate, Coldwell banker. I'm a licensed real estate agent with the ability to assist clients with land, residential, and commercial real estate needs. Folks, our city is being sold down the river and it's been turned over to the staff. We're not allowed to go to staff meetings, Lauren. I've made several requests. In fact, folks, I don't know if you're aware, but every file or every person in this city has a file.
Address.
An address file. And there's stuff in there, and our city councilmen are digging in there in a Gestapo type search against our own city complaint policy, looking to dig dirt up. So please come to the next city council meeting. We'll be talking about home occupation, but as a city councilman, is everybody in Grant a real estate agent? No, just the ones that were sitting on our on our previous city council. We used to have 3 people dealing in real estate, a used car salesman and a dog washer. So, folks, I'd like some real qualified people to step up.
Okay, well, let's go to the next clip. This will be interesting. We'll talk on the other side.
I think that's being addressed. I talked to our Carter Johnson, White Bear Press. Our city is currently, and correct me, Tom, are we going back to White Bear Press? That's what I was told by the
I haven't talked to anybody there.
city staff. That's what I've been told by Carter Johnson. If you notice, within the last couple weeks, they've now put another, if you want to get a copy of the White Bear Press, there's a box out next to the outhouse at City Hall.
There. Now, the mayor didn't know that it was going back. Let's back the train up a little bit. What they did is on the consent agenda, they changed the legal paper. Consent agenda are those common run-of-the-mill items like paying bills that there's no discussion on. Well, they put a number of items such as appointments on the consent agenda and included changing the newspaper. Well, it was a massive change in terms of price, and the coverage is much less. And so I've been in conversations with the city clerk, and in fact, I planted the seed and was trying to water it, that they go back to using the White Bear Press, because the coverage is about 2 to 3 times of what the St. Paul Pioneer Press is, and that's just because the White Bear Press covers the west 2/3. So again, he doesn't even know what's going on. Once again, he's pushing things out to the consultants and things.
Actually, Lon, I think it's better than that. I don't think he knew we were even changing our legal paper. That was done by our city administrator. And if you remember, our city administrator about 2 years ago was our part-time clerk. She handed in her resignation, and 1 week later, they asked her to come back and turned her into your city administrator. Folks, as for her qualifications, she doesn't have a degree in city planning, yet she's running your city, she's making the decisions, and the reason she's doing it is the mayor is not allowing the council to get involved, and he's not willing to put in the work himself. Like he says, he doesn't know.
Well, we're going on to the next video, and we will talk about that on the other side.
State law provides planning commissions with certain authorities. And so
Well, here's to my
It
point.
does, actually it does. And it's very interesting, if you look at some of the league materials, the league has said that it's not clear what happens to these authorities if a city, or when a city, abolishes a planning commission. Because cities have abolished their planning commissions altogether, they've just written them out of their ordinances. So there's a little bit of discrepancy there between state law and practice. That being said, the goal is to try to align everything so that it matches with what we're doing here. I mean, there's no other effort there but that.
I have a real simple solution, and maybe I'm crazy, but why don't we just say, when there is no planning commission, the city council shall serve as a planning commission and call it good, then the rest of the language can stand there. Can we
Well,
do
there
that?
is a planning commission, it's
Huh?
just not populated.
When there is no official appointed planning commission, you can word it any way you want, the city council shall serve as the planning commission.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so that's all we need to say, and I think we're done. It goes to Steve's point, then if we decide that we're gonna do a planning commission, there will be an official appointed planning commission, then the planning commission would be the planning commission. If there isn't a planning commission, the city council would be the planning commission. I think that seems to take and would solve all our, it's very simple, short, sweet, and we're done, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's fine, and that would be a very short text amendment to the ordinance. It may require a public hearing. And whether we do it at the next meeting, or whether, because of the public hearing notice requirements, it gets pushed one more meeting, I think that's a resolution. So why don't we plan simply to take the resolution off the agenda, and then if we can get the ordinance on the agenda with the public hearing notice requirements, we'll do that. Okay, then fine, then we'll just push it to the next meeting.
Okay.
Well, what's very interesting about that, folks, is they're changing the law to match what they're doing. Gee whiz, next time I get stopped by an officer, gee, officer, I was only doing 70 and a 50. Can't we change the law to match how fast I want to drive? I mean, this is hilarious. Not only that, it's going to take a public hearing. There has not been a public hearing for an ordinance change. Again, this is not the fiefdom of car. You can't make things up as you go along, like he did in the consent agenda. Oh, by the way, we changed it. Now you need a second to take something off the consent agenda. They're making things up as he goes. Not only that, he's delegating things to the staff and having them make decisions, and he's going with the flow. And once again, this shows that he really doesn't know what's going on within the city of Grant.
Our planning commission, if you look in chapter 24, it says that you shall have a planning commission. Its duty is to review all land use applications, rezoning, variances, ordinances. So until the city does exactly what our attorney advised them to do, post a public hearing and amend its ordinance, then they would be allowed to serve as a planning commission. But they haven't done that, folks. And all these changes, home occupation and everything, they're doing and have been doing for last year, have been illegally
That's
held.
the point I was going to make. When you're changing the law to match what you're doing, doesn't that kind of mean that you're not doing something legally? Now, the next clip we're going to have is from a concerned citizen and talks about the planning commission. So if we could play that, please.
Been here since 1987, quite a few years, and live on Jody, 10317 Jody. My comment is this: you have a perfect example of why you need a planning commission. Right here, your whole discussion tonight begs a planning commission. So the sooner you get that done, folks, then you can get on with creating reasonable policy for the citizens of Grant. Okay? And I recommend that heartily. Because I don't want somebody coming over my place and saying, you got to have a cup because you keep a couple of hives of bees. I don't want that. And nobody else that wants that either. So,
Thanks.
on the ball. Get your plans so they can go.
There, so there are people in Grant that do want a planning commission. He's functioning illegally. Of course, we all know what illegal
Well,
is.
now
It's
we're
a
going
big,
to go
sick
after
word.
those of you that might know this gentleman, Jerry Lenzer. He probably taught a lot of your children in school. Very good gentleman, retired. According to the home occupation that they're going at the next, it's a posted public hearing, so I encourage you to come. But what he's going to be doing, he actually does operate out of his home and his land. So he has bees, and folks, if you have apple trees and flowers in your garden, they're beneficial to our community. But according to our home occupation, he would have to come in, get a conditional use permit for $3,500 so he can collect a little bit of honey, and he sells it down at the farmer's market and out of his home over there. But folks, that's not the community we moved into.
Well-
It's not the home in the country that our seal says. It is the development of our staff turning our home in the country into a home in the city.
Yeah, well, the thing I wanted to add is I believe keeping of bees falls under the umbrella of agricultural operations. So, but let's go on. The next clip is rather long, but at the end, I didn't have a chance to cut it down, but at the end I want to show you the interaction with Mr. Zick and Ms. Lobin. So if we could play that, it's rather long.
Business interest in Grant. First of all, I'd like to say this, the draft for consideration of land use definitions, I look back over here, it would have been nice to have those out so we could look at them and see what's on there. I think it behooves the council or staff to have that stuff available for how do we review it if we don't have it. Okay, the issue here, just like Jack and just like the last speaker said, the application of ordinance, policy, process, enforcement. I look at this and I consider, after what Mr. Huber did to Mr. Lanou falsely last council meeting, you ought to be ashamed of yourself, by the way.
Well,
you can
excuse me,
smile as
are we
much
gonna
as you
talk
want.
about the uses, or?
Well, it is.
Okay.
And I mean, it's about the uses and it's about the misuses.
We're talking about the uses.
Well, you know, you have to include the other
No, I
side. the
don't
mis-
have to.
Well, you
No.
don't like to do
No,
anything
no,
there.
well, that's your
I
opinion.
understand that.
You don't have to.
I don't understand that.
Okay.
So now, when you,
Talk about the
when you
uses,
put,
please. Thank you.
put these more restrictive land use, like was said, will lead to more outrageous, false attacks against Grant residents, again, like was done last month. And I think I can see why, when I came in here, I was handed a couple flyers here that,
You mean this, Mr. Zick?
Childish flyers?
Excuse me, Mr. Zick. This?
well, this here.
You printed
And-
this
and I
and handed
think-
it out?
I think everybody ought to read this stuff. I mean, if you're gonna enforce conditional use permits, and if one
Well,
council
we're
member...
not talking about enforcing conditional use permits. We're talking, do you have a comment about golf courses, home occupations, commercial
Well,
recreation?
absolutely,
Do-
home occupation.
Let's talk about that then.
That's what was attacked last week, or last council meeting. I was over at City Hall and looked up information. There's a business, according to that, called Happy Dogs, no conditional use permit.
Don't need one.
Excuse me,
CLC.
Mr. Zick, before you go nosing into my business and go to the city hall and get my property records, you could have just asked, but you don't do that. You just assume and you make silly,
Official-
I'm talking. You make silly
Excuse me.
cartoons like this and
Excuse me.
accusations.
Don't point,
I
that's
have a
rude, that's
COC.
rude, that's rude, that's rude. Get
You're
your
doing
finger
it?
down.
All right.
Okay, you know what?
Can you control
Now,
her?
Well,
Oh my God.
if I could control you. Now, you either talk about home occupations, please, and the other ones,
That's what I
or
was
you can
talking
sit,
about.
or you can sit down.
That's what I was talking
Well,
about.
then you finish talking about that.
So when I go look up public records and don't want to have
What are you laughing
people
at?
twist the truth,
Yeah.
You're
the
joking.
records are the records. That's why I look up the records.
You're not talking, okay, this is your last chance. Either talk about the uses or sit down, please.
Again, the fear is
Okay,
that...
you need to sit
that
down,
on
Mr.
these
Zick.
home
Mr. Zick, you need to sit
occupation,
down or you'll
you
be
need to
escorted from the building. Sit down, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
arrogant mayor.
Thank you, you're welcome.
That's a little bit of entertainment. It's kind of interesting. And we talked about complaints, and he talked about a complaint last month. That's what so this next clip involves the complaint that was made, so if we, control room could play that, please?
You made a very good point about enforcement out there, and we've got a home occupation policy sitting in front of us. The last city council meeting, we talked about grandfather clause, did we not? And none of this addresses a grandfather clause. You say, we don't have definitions. You can't tell the people what we can and can't do. We talked about grandfather clauses. None of this in our home occupation have you addressed. Actually, prior to Mr. Huber coming and attacking me for a conditional use permit, and I explained to him that I moved out here prior and I didn't require a conditional use permit. Now, since then, they've filed a formal complaint on me from the building inspector requiring a conditional use permit. And I explained at this meeting that I was here prior to that. Now, I've got documentation showing that I moved out here in 1982. I've got documentation that says your ordinance requiring conditional use permits did not come in effect till 1983. And yet, I am not required to get a conditional use permit. I explained that right at the city council meeting, yet Mr. Huber has come out and filed a formal complaint against me. I explained it. He didn't do his due diligence.
well, again,
I'm
we're
not
off-
done,
we're off-
Mr. Mayor. Point of
we're
order,
off
I have the
topic
floor.
again.
Point
No.
of floor, order, I have the floor. I'm not done yet. And then you can admonish me after we're done. So, since then, Mr. Huber has filed a complaint to somebody for Hools because now their conditional use permit is out of compliance. I've never had a single complaint on my property, and yet he has taken it upon himself to come out and file the complaint personally against me after I explained there was none needed. Since then, because Hools had a campaign sign out there, he's gone after their trailers out there. He does not seem to go after this young lady who's operating
All right,
a
that's
business.
enough. All right.
Nor
Jeff.
Axtell
No,
is
it's-
operating
Jeff,
in
you wanna say
violation.
something?
So-
Yeah, I would like to say
We-
something.
we-
Mr.
we-
Mr. Lanou,
Yeah.
Mr. Lanou, please, sir, may I answer the accusation,
Sure,
sir?
and then we're gonna get on with the
Absolutely.
topic.
Thank you,
that's
sir.
at hand.
I read the letter from 1984 from this,
Okay, well, I'm going to address that right now in the next clip. One of the things I did, and you'll notice I was talked over somewhat, I didn't do the point of order thing I should have, but I wanted to get out, and the reason I went and did research, I found the ordinance that were passed in 1983. I dug way back, did a lot of research, and I just pointed out to the public exactly what was involved in that. And so if we could play that clip, please?
And
Okay,
then we're gonna move on.
okay.
It better not be about Larry, because this isn't about Larry.
It isn't about Larry.
Okay, thank you.
This is about the things we're talking about. We're talking about ordinances, okay? Town of Grant zoning ordinance, I did some research and some due diligence. This was adopted December 17th, 1982, and it was effective February 2nd, 1983. Okay, and here's what and I don't know if we can zoom this up or down, but it says, all agricultural operations in existence upon the effective date of this ordinance shall be a permitted use. However, all regulations contained hereon and other community ordinances in effect shall apply to all changes of the agricultural operation which will cause all or part of the area to become more extensively used or more urban in character. Setback and other regulations shall apply to agricultural operations just as they do residential. So in other words, any agricultural operation that was in existence before the ordinance is now,
Yeah, but Lauren, are you talking about we're not talking about grandfathering, that's a whole separate
well,
conversation.
that's what I'm talking, that's what I'm
Yeah,
talking.
but that's not on the agenda. It's not on the agenda. It doesn't mean we can't talk about it, but it's not on the agenda.
Well, I just wanted to-
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate it.
There. Well, you see what kind of cooperation I get. I'm bringing forward information to the documentation about home occupations and where we came from and where we are today. He doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't want to hear it.
Look at the double standard, Lauren, that we have out there. When Mr. Zick looks at Councilwoman Tina Loben's property records, which do require a conditional use permit, he's told to sit down, shut up, and go back. Yet Mr. Huber is allowed to come out and attack. And folks, this happened at our first city council meeting. You know, any civic leader that I know at the first meeting might have welcomed us as new councilmen, recognized that we have differences, right? And that we work for the betterment of the community. But let me just read a quick deal. And folks, this is another one of these $500 letters or whatever the figure is that our attorney sent out. I know he spent a lot of time writing. I think this week alone, I got 5 different letters from our city attorney. Loren, I assume you got a couple.
I had several also. I got a number of letters also.
But let me give you a
Waste of money.
little bit of example about our complaint policy, and I'm a little bit aware of it because Lauren, you and I were on the planning commission
When we wrote it.
wrote the complaint policy. So it says, please note, the city of Grant operates on a complaint-based system. It does not have staff patrolling the city for zoning violations. Rather, when a written complaint is filed with the city clerk administrator, she forwards the complaint to the appropriate staff for review. The appropriate staff member reviews the complaint, visits the property if needed, and conducts an initial analysis as to whether a violation has even taken place. If it has been determined that a violation has occurred, staff contacts the individuals involved and explain both the violation and the required resolution. Contact is initiated by telephone and then by mail. Probably not at your first city council meeting. But if the individual involved in the complaint remedies the violation within a correction period identified by the staff member, a reinspection occurs and the violation is resolved. If the violation still exists, a final notice is provided. If the violation remains unresolved upon a second opportunity to cure the violation, the city may initiate legal process, including criminal action or civil action. Prior to the initial initiation of legal process, the matter is forwarded to the city council for review and direction. It is the goal of the city to encourage voluntary compliance with the city ordinance. It is not the staff's intent to place any undue burden on property owners. Rather, so long as the owner is in compliance with the city's code of ordinance, the complaint will be closed and the violation nullified. City staff strives to apply consistent process to all complaints, resulting in uniform and consistent treatment regardless of the individuals involved. And folks, that's not what happened. Mr. Huber dug in files. He seen back in 1984, I was given a letter, asked me if I'd consider getting a conditional use permit because they thought I had too many horses on 10 acres. We were a friendlier community then. I simply picked up the phone, called Sheila Davis, our city clerk, informed her that when I purchased my property in 1982, I bought 30 acres. The 10 acres she refers to is the 10 that my mortgage is attached to, because I don't know if you're aware, but you're only allowed to finance up to 10 acres on an FHA loan. So I owned 30. It was explained with a simple phone call. That's why that sat in there for 30 years, and there was no action required. That's why there's no further documentation beyond that. I've never had a single complaint in that 33-year history I've lived in the city of Grant on my property. Yet Mr. Huber's out digging, and he will be digging into your files next. He went after Hool's Feed Store over there also. Whether it was Mr. Huber, I've asked as a councilman, I've not been allowed to see who filed the complaint. And so I can't say for sure it was Mr. Huber, but there was a file or complaint filed on.
Well, we have to move on to the next clip, if we could, please.
I live at 10244, 67th Lane North in Grant, Minnesota. When we moved to Grant in 1981, the realtor told us that Grant was a place for a home in the city, a home in the country. And I'm not so sure that we're moving towards a home in the city, because we have all these things that all of a sudden seem to be extremely necessary now, and I'm wondering why, because we went for so many years without this and we didn't have particularly any kind of problems except a few years ago when we had a former councilman engaged in inspection and caused the city to be engaged in several lawsuits, which for the most part the city lost, and it costs us a lot of money. So here we are now, and we're tightening down a little bit more in terms of definition. And I'm not opposed to definition, but what I'm concerned about is that we've had a lot of people who have moved to this city, originally a township, who have moved here for particular reasons to do things where they would be left alone. And so now we're going to have definitions, and I'm concerned about those people who may have had an understanding of what they could do here and what they could not do here. Are they now going to be forced to have a conditional use permit? And so the process of application and the process of enforcement, I think, is extremely important before any definition. If the enforcement is left up to councilmen, or councilwoman, excuse me, then I have some concerns with that, particularly if we have no definition of this, how that is to take place. In the last council meeting, I was very disappointed in the manner in which one councilman accused another councilman of certain things regarding conditional use permits. I do not think this is a forum for that type of discussion. And I would be very concerned that any definition that does not include the process for enforcement, inspection, et cetera, is not in place before you put this definition in place. I don't have any particular definition problems, but I think we need a process as to how the definitions are going to be applied and how they're going to be used. Without that, I'm afraid we're going down the same track that we went down several years ago, and it cost us a lot of money. This is not the place for a courtroom. This is a place for the council to act on behalf of the community. And anything that we do in terms of definitions should also include the health, safety, and welfare of the citizenry of this community. And I strongly suggest that you table this definition business until you sit down and decide how you're going to process it.
There. Well, that is, you see the long list of concern about the changes they're attempting to make. They're following staff recommendations. And, you know, the other interesting thing is, this slips into the next subject that we're going to be talking about. They made a couple wild changes for event centers and supper clubs. They made massive changes to ordinances last year, and now they have an event center. Now this person, and they very specifically said in the conditional use permit that for this wedding barn, that the vendors, in other words, whoever the caterer was, had to maintain the liquor license. Now they've had about 5 complaints in the first season they were open, and they're only open in the summer months. Okay, now they're coming back and requesting a liquor license. And the next person up is a man that lives across the street from him who is also an attorney. And he will explain what's going on. If we could play the next clip.
My name is Kevin Rhodes. I live at 12160 Upper Heather Avenue North in Hugo. And just to amplify what the previous speaker said, it's not only the members or the constituents of Grant who are impacted in these zoning changes, but also those of us who live on the borders. And as some of you know, I'm personally impacted by a zoning change, the addition of the rural event centers to agricultural land zoned A2 last year without the kind of public hearing or notice to adjacent homeowners that should have been provided. And our attorney sent a letter to the city council and the city attorney last spring detailing our concerns with that process, and I see it repeating itself again. I mean, I don't think a full record's been developed here. I don't think the council has the benefit of careful thought and planning as to what's going on in terms of the different zoning changes. A perfect example, the mayor spoke of the change to commercial, recreational, commercial indoor zoning, and he said we're making it more expansive. And I think if you look at the draft...
I didn't say make it more expensive.
Expansive.
No, I said we're not allowing commercial indoor recreation, we're not allowing it at all.
You're not allowing it in A2.
We're not allowing it anymore.
You're not allowing it in A2, but yet rural event centers are allowed in A2. I mean, what's the difference? The inconsistency is glaring here. I don't think that you're taking into account a comprehensive, thoughtful plan for development of Grant in these different areas. I think it's piecemeal, and I think it's anecdotal and episodic here. And I don't think that's the kind of city planning that the citizens of Grant or adjacent communities should expect. The enforcement point is very good as well. I mean, the perfect example is on your agenda later tonight. You have a request for a liquor license for the Delwood Wedding Bars, the rural event center that sprung up next door without our knowledge after the zoning was changed. And there has been no effort to enforce the CUP that was put in place last spring, despite the fact that Condition 31 of the CUP expressly provided for review after the first year of operation. So now, the first year of operation is done. We documented and sent to the city at least 5 instances where we believed there was noncompliance with the CUP. We heard nothing. We heard absolutely nothing from the city. Till tonight, or a few days ago, we got notice of that this hearing was going to take place, and a recommendation from the staff that the liquor license be approved without any kind of review of whether it fits with the character of the neighborhood, without any kind of review for whether the applicant's in compliance with the existing CUP. So I don't think we should be amending or expanding use without enforcement, without the kind of thoughtful consideration of these issues that the citizens of Grant and adjacent communities deserve. That's my point.
Loren, did you catch that he said recommendation from the staff? Were you sitting at the city council meeting? Were you consulted? Have you seen any review?
Absolutely
It's
not.
all done by your staff, and our staff, remember, we have Mayor Huber, realtor, Councilman Jeff, did I call him Mayor Huber?
Yeah.
Mayor Carr, Councilman Brad Huber. We've got our city planner, Jennifer Hascamp. Once again, realtor. Folks, I think our city is being sold down the river.
Well, the point I want to make too is when you're going to change a CUP, there has to be a public hearing. You just don't all of a sudden say, oh yeah, by the way, your horse stable, you can put 3 poles in it and hire some dancers. You know, we don't need to hear from the neighbors. Yeah, and again, this man makes several very good points. And of course, you know, you and I are on the bottom side of things because we're 2 votes, and whatever the other 3 they vote in pact, whatever Carr or Huber throw out there, Tina's going to vote with. So, but I did get one thing through. If you can watch the next clip and see what I've done. For further discussion, I would like to see it tabled actually for 2 months so we have a little bit longer time to review this, because if they're not operating now, it really doesn't matter, is what I'm saying. They're not conducting business right now, so time isn't of the essence.
We actually
Yep.
are.
Lauren,
Do we have a second on this?
I will second that.
We did get that pushed through. They're putting it off until April, zippity-doo-dah. We need to have a hearing on that. I think this is a disaster. They're giving a liquor license to a place, to an event center. Well, now they're calling it a wedding barn. Well, what happens if they want to have other events? Well, maybe we're going to have an engagement event. Maybe we're going to have a beer tasting for prospective brides. Lord only knows, and they're going to be the sole control. They could turn that basically into whatever they want because it's a special event center and there's not adequate definition and it doesn't belong there.
Lauren, if you were at that meeting, one of the things this lady came up that owned the event center says, well, you know, I talked to our city planner and our attorney, and I thought that was my review when I talked to him earlier. I thought I was just coming here to be given my liquor license. And so once again, all this has been turned over to staff. Like I said, my request to attend a staff meeting has been, we've been turned down. We're not allowed to go to staff meetings. And the other thing that's interesting, I said, if we're not allowed to go to staff meetings, I would like to see a summary of the staff and what's being discussed. I'd have no idea what's discussed at these staff meetings. I don't know if you've got any.
I've received nothing. I've made the request. I've received nothing. Now we're going to shift gears once again. And of course, most of you may or may not be familiar with that. Larry went down to the League of Minnesota Cities for a legal opinion, and I went with him. And one of the things that happened is I was mailing a bunch of my bills, and I don't like to leave them in my mailbox because the mail's picked up anywhere from 11 o'clock till 5 o'clock at night. and with the identity theft going around, it's just not wise to do that. I mean, I had several large checks, one for 6 months of insurance. So I went across the street and mailed, and of course, Larry has asked for copies of his file numerous times, and they're not forthcoming. So granted, it was a little impulsive. He just took the whole darn file. Well, I since have been
The Attorney General's office.
well, we took, so I also have been contacted by the police and explained this to them, and I think they're well aware that this is a witch hunt, just like the other things are. So then Mayor Carr starts coming after me, and this is what this clip is about, so if control room could play it. Mr. Huber, right now.
I'm calling you, but I'll call on you now, Loren. Go ahead.
Okay, that letter was a common sales puffing letter that attorneys send out to threat to sue you.
I take no position.
I have never trespassed on the Wildwood School. And by the way, that school did have a Superfund number. It may have entered the VIC program,
Okay.
but it in fact had. So that again is a bogus letter. And
I take no
the
position,
second,
sir.
the second thing, Mayor, what are you charging me with? What have you said I've done?
Were you in the truck with Larry when he did
Yes, I was sitting in
Okay.
his truck.
You were in the truck.
So what is that? Big, I'm in the truck, I'm sitting in his car, what's the deal with that?
Did you not see the clips?
I don't
you
know,
run off?
there's an investigation going on that I'm not gonna comment on.
Go ahead, come after me, Mayor. My attorney's handed you your butt twice, it's gonna be 3. Then are we gonna get your resignation?
I'm not coming after you, I wouldn't do that. Other people may, but I won't. Okay. Mr. Attorney, do you have something for us?
There, that's very clear. Oh, I wouldn't come after you.
You know-
Let me correct. First, he charged me with impersonating being a planning commissioner when I was one, and my attorney, and he was supposed to, by the way, they were supposed to have this review be, they were supposed to have it posted and reviewed, and they never have summarized. Second of all, there was a violation of open meeting law. Again, he lost. And now he's telling me that I can't sit in Larry's car. This is very, very interesting.
Well, actually, Lauren, looking back, remember, I simply took my property file, which Mr. Huber brought to our first city council meeting and held up, so he was allowed to take it out, but I'm not. And I informed our city administrator, I'm taking to the League of Minnesota Cities, Minnesota IPAD Investigative Analysis Policy Department. I told her the government agencies were going to. You know, she simply had the opportunity, like any good administrator would have said, well, Larry, when you're done with it, could you please bring that file back? She has not provided any information I've asked or printing of any documents. So actually 2 minutes before I asked for my own file, I asked for Ms. Tina Loben's conditional use permit, and she said, I don't have time to look that stuff up right now and give you a copy. She said, I'll get to it when I can. So I was not provided it. I took it out, absolutely. I offered to return it. Actually, I brought it back to the Washington County Sheriff's deal. But see, folks, we're going to end into a lot of litigation, and over what? Our city administrator should have said, you know, Larry, I don't believe what was done to you at the first meeting was atrocious. Bring it down there, get what you need done, and bring it back. See, this is a witch hunt, and folks, your staff is running your city.
We're making a good transition here because you talked about Tina Loben. We have a couple brief clips. We'll start with the next one, and we'll talk on the other side.
I have a question off of basically what you just said.
Okay.
So, for instance, I have a home and then I have a detached garage. So I see that, I mean, there's lots of pole barns or detached buildings and on a lot of properties. So if you had a business, like you're saying, you've got trucks and trailers and what have you, does that need to be included if they're at your home anyway?
She's basically asking, do I need a CUP? That's
for her dog washing.
For her dog washing. Okay, now let's go to the next clip, which is also very short.
So basically then with the criteria that you laid out, if somebody's home occupation fits that criteria, they do not need to come to the city at all to pull any kind of permit whatsoever. And if it goes outside of that criteria, then they would be applying for a CUP.
Yep.
Okay.
There. Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting, ladies and gentlemen, because I was attacked in the newspaper. This is the February 18th, White Bear Press, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, I'm going to summarize it. A city soap opera, Tina Loben, Our new Grant Councilman Larry Lanu and Loren Sederstrom are making a joke of our city. Besides their behavior at council meetings, they both have shows on Channel 16. Well, that's not true. Well, we're going to correct all these errors. And they continually make up stories about the council members. Mr. Sederstrom is a guest host for Bob Zick. They call my home during the show. There's a 2-page handout. Larry Lanu needs a conditional use permit. He'd be grandfathered in. Okay, that's what she made several charges in that particular one. And here is the letter that's going to be going in the White Bear Press. Factual inaccuracies. Councilwoman Tina Loban continues to disseminate misinformation and innuendo again. Let me list the inaccuracies. All Around Grant is shown Mondays at 7 p.m. on cable channel 15, not channel 16. It is pre-recorded for replay. Consequently, there are no live phone calls, and I have never called her at home. 3, all clips are shown from the official city DVD, which you can compare to the meetings replayed on channel 16, the government channel. If you Google YouTube and type in All Around Grant, you can see for yourself my behavior at council meetings, no made-up stories as she has asserted. 4, she makes hollow statements and innuendo to associate me with events I had no knowledge of. For example, I was unaware of the cartoon handouts at the meeting until the rest of the city council was. 5, I have not appeared in Bob Zick's Inside show in over a year as a guest, and I am not his co-host. 6, I have a copy of Tina's Certificate of Compliance, which is called COC, and it is for a 30-foot by 30-foot accessory building, and not for a dog grooming business as she professes. Number 7, the city of Grant has a history of persecuting businesses. They have extensively litigated against Painted Sky Stable and lost. As a matter of fact, the judge said it was arbitrary and capricious. They have also came after Hegberg's, the landscaping center, Victoria Station, which has been a barn since the 60s, and most recently Hool's Feed Store, while wildly modifying ordinances for others to include special event centers and supper clubs in A1 and A2, which is just crazy. Okay, the last incorrect thing she had in there, in 1983, ordinances were updated. In Ag Portion 744-01, it stated, quote, all agricultural operations in existence upon the effective date of this ordinance shall be a permitted use, unquote. Larry Lanu was operating in 1982 and therefore a permitted use, or in generic terms, grandfathered in. There is an old saying, you think education is expensive? Try ignorance. And that's refuting. I guess I'm very tired of being called a liar and blasted in the pages of the paper, misquoted. I have the evidence, and I've proven it beyond the shadow of a doubt. So that's one of the things we're having to deal with. I'm having to personally deal with. And the way it's set up, obviously, Larry and I probably won't be able to get any issues resolved because we're the minority and they vote in block against us, whatever it is. So now we're going to shift gears back, like we started the show with, going back to the most recent Charter Commission meeting. And Larry came up with a unique proposal, and if Control Room could play that, please.
At this time, put forth a proposal that I'll be receiving compensation for being a councilman. If our city is willing to put into a fund specifically for use of the Charter Commission, review for attorneys, advertising, whatever our expenses are, I would donate any wages earned as a city councilman for this year to be directed to the city council. I believe Mr. Sederstrom, I can't speak for him, he's shaking his head, he would do the same. That would bring us up to a reasonable amount that we could do that. We could engage an attorney. We could pay for some of our advertising. My question is, I could ask Mr. Carr if he'd consider putting his wages in towards it. Probably would get an answer at this point. But I would ask that we put this be brought forward to the city council to ask them if that is something that would be allowed and made available. It's just a It's just basically a numbers game. Can we put the money in a fund right now dedicated strictly to the use of the Charter Commission?
They went into a long conversation about if they put it a line item, then they couldn't do this, and then they couldn't do that. But the bare fact is, Mayor Carr petitioned the judge to have a charter commission. When he couldn't stack it with his cronies, he's been fighting tooth and nail all along. We had an organizational meeting, and he informed the chairperson that she was violating open meeting law, which they were convicted of, basically. He goes along, he withholds any funding from them. He will not give them a dime. Statute says they have to provide $1,500. Oh no, not a dime. We're going into the third year, okay? He will not even let the Charter Commission meet in the City Hall. And once again, we had made the offer to donate funds to help this go along.
Not our funds, our earnings as councilmen, Loren, and maybe I proposed it a little wrong to have it moved from one line item. What I corrected later is if you simply pay us our wages, and it's just a line item deal as we need it, and you do it now, you can 1099 us. It is not going to be the city's money any longer. Once we're paid, it's not the city's money. We can put it in a pack, but the bottom line is this charter is the best thing for your city. It's well needed, well deserved, and you will see when it comes out that it is the best protection your city will ever have.
Well, that's what it is. It's like having a parachute in an airplane. But the point I was trying to make, Larry, is what they're doing is they're trying to come up with everything they can to strangle and stop this charter commission. There was the phony petition on that they worded funny. Not only that, when the first petition was in the improper form, Mayor Carr called a special meeting to pass it and make sure it got through. So you know, I guess there's an old saying, don't go by what a man says, go by what he does. And if you look at the pattern of behavior of Mayor Carr, exactly what he's done right down the road, as a matter of fact, it's continuing. Not only is it with the charter, he continually interrupts me. I was bringing good information, and all the way down the road, he's fighting tooth and nail.
He's a roadblock in life.
Yep, he's a speed bump in the parking lot of life. So that's what I wanted to point out. And Larry also made another motion in this particular meeting that I think was pretty good. So if control room could play that.
To add the language, I'll give you each a copy of it. The City Council, Planning Commission, Charter Commission, and any other government body requiring a quorum shall be conducted according to Robert's Rule of Order as most recently revised to govern meeting procedures insofar as possible. This is, I've got a copy of our Planning Commission. Our Planning Commission says a meeting shall be conducted according to Robert's rules. Our Planning Commission was enacted back in 1967. It's worked well. The last City Council meeting, Mayor Carr stated, the City Council operates using Robert's rules, although I haven't experienced that sitting on a council yet. But I do go back to our
there, and that got put in the charter. It's very interesting, the types of things, and I want to kind of go back to one of the clips I talked about earlier when I was talking about him coming after me. Jeff Huber, Councilman Huber, wrote the letter that, and I didn't have a chance to refute it, that I was sent a threatening letter by Hoffman and Larkin that I was not supposed to trespass again, they said, on school property. I was only on school property twice, both functioning as a chairman of the Planning Commission. So once again, they're throwing mud and see what'll stick. Just for example, like what's in the newspaper, where Councilwoman Loban throws all kinds of mud, makes 8 false statements to try to make me look poor. And again,
Loren, I know we're running a little short, but one thing that I will tell you that the Charter Commission, or the Roberts Rules does, it offers protections. When they sanction me, they actually try to sanction me within the first 2 minutes of being sworn in. Is the first threat of sanction. The next month, they did it. It wasn't on the agenda. The attorney took over the meeting. He had a resolution. It wasn't any copies for the people in the back. And when I raised my hand, I said, you know, Robert's rules, point of order, Robert's rules dictates that I have the opportunity to speak. They said, no, you don't. They voted, slammed the deal. So their resolution isn't worth the paper that Nick wrote it on, except for the fact that it does have value because Nick made probably hundreds of dollars writing it.
Well, we'll talk about his letters in a minute, but the point is, they just asked for yays, they never asked. I never had an opportunity to vote on it, and that's noted, by the way, in the White Bear Press. They noted in here that, let's see, where did that go?
We'll get it. We're running tight, Loren, so we'll catch up. And let's
it
go to the
says here,
next.
Loren Sederstrom didn't appear to cast a vote. Okay, so again, let's go to the last clip if we could, please.
Put a legislative update up here.
Yes.
I was down to the legislation recently, both on issues for Met Council coming forward, which doesn't have much to do for a charter. But while I was there, I had the opportunity to talk to some of our state representatives. I showed them the fallacy of a 5% number to discharge a charter commission. They're considering raising that up to a higher standard. They've realized what's happened in Grant. In fact, our own state representative, Kathy Lomer, says, you know, Larry, she says, I'll find you some, and Representative Detmer, to help you get that bill written and move forward. It's simple language change. But our own state representative said, but I won't touch that bill as far as authoring the original language because your city is so dysfunctional. She says, and the repercussions from it are, she says, I wouldn't touch it, your city with a 10-foot pole. And Madam Chair, I've been on a council just 2 months. I think this happened long before that. Our cities had that. That's why we become a charter city. But they're willing to move that up there. They're looking at the language which says that it takes a minimum of 10% to petition to become a charter city, to bring that forward for the citizens. So we're talking to legislators now to move that language to a higher threshold, just as we have a 20% in initiative and referendum. They're considering that. They realize what's happened in Grant is just a farce on how our charter commission was almost derailed after 2 years of work. One of the things they are considering is not allowing that vote to take place until a charter is written and voted upon. In other words, we've had 2 years of work out there that Mr. Tufte almost got derailed and misled the citizens of Grant. They understand the issue. That is also being considered in the $1,500. They realize that is way too low, especially in language could be inserted so that a starting commission has more operating funds than an existing. So all these are being considered moving forward.
Well, there we go. That's our show for the day, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. We covered a lot of information. We're going to keep you current. When we come back next month, we'll have some more things. Also watch local reporting live 5 o'clock on Fridays. We alternate every other time on that. So again, thank you for joining us.
And the last comment I'd like to say is show up at our city council meetings. Don't let the realtors, don't let your staff take your city over. Left alone and unattended, you will be the home in the city with Met, Sewer, and Council, and pretty soon we will be just like Lake Elmo being overrun.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.